And with that said, hello everyone. So excited to be here. So excited to be here with my good friend and collaborator, Karl Dakin. If you know Karl, he's just a fabulous individual of great wealth of experience and knowledge, especially towards the funding area, as well as business development and all parts of business, actually. So, with that, today's word of the day or topic is bootstrapping, which I've got a great deal of experience, and I'm sure most people at one stage of their business life has had to deal with scarcity and figure ways to be creative and innovative in putting something together to get them into abundance. And sometimes scarcity is a motivating factor, and it's also, if there is a quality limiting factor, scarcity could apply because it makes you make more of what you have as opposed to having a wealth of, let's say, access to capital and resources that you can deploy willy nilly. And maybe if you have enough of it, it'll get you over the hump. It may not be that efficient or that timely. But yeah, I think less is more at times. I know it's not something people look forward to starting with less, but it makes them think a little bit more, challenge themselves a little bit more, and maybe become a little more humble along the way as appreciation and gratitude goes. So with that, I'll turn it over to Karl. Karl can give you a little bit of an update. Karl's always doing some fabulously innovative and creative initiatives. I always read his daily newsletter. I guess it's 5 days a week now. And also watch his shows, which are typically Tuesdays at 8 a.m. Mountain Time and Thursdays, 8 a.m. Mountain Time. And with that, great introduction. I give myself credit for. Karl, let's hear a little bit about who you are and more importantly, what you're doing in the near future that everybody else can take advantage of, and initial thoughts on bootstrapping. So a threer.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Don, for letting me be on your show this morning. I am the Capital Coach. That's a self-given name. And as I've described to people, that doesn't mean I drive the shuttle around the National Monument. It has to do with assisting businesses and communities in designing, staging, and conducting capital campaigns. And by doing that, quite often I have to, as you say, take a business as it stands. I don't get the perfect person. And obviously, if they're already funded, then they don't need assistance in raising funding. But too often, I will get people walk in the door. They go, I need to raise money. I need to raise money yesterday, and I have no budget. And so that's when I get out a magic wand and I start trying to get creative on, is there a way to help someone in that situation? But the better case is working with businesses who have proven some level of success. They've outgrown their friends and family, and now they're looking to grow and scale. Those are the projects that are easiest for me to work with. But I'm up to the challenge. I'm willing to work with people who are stuck in their fundraising. And as I offer through my newsletter and through my show, I'll take a 15-minute call. You need to contact me at my email address, kdakin@Dakin Capital. But without charge, 15 minutes, I'll see what I can do to give you a snap answer, suggestion, comment, or introduction that will move you forward on your funding project. Because I want you to succeed. I want you to get the funding to move forward and do what it is you're trying to do. So bootstrapping, as Don has identified the topic of the day, is working with whatever resources you currently have without using somebody else's resources. We're not talking about other people's money. We're not talking about all of that. Now, you may want to get to that. That is what raising funding is all about. But if you have to raise the money with the money in your own pocket, then you're bootstrapping your capital campaign. And we're going to dive into that here today, I'm sure, in lots of detail.
Well, that's a great start. And, to mirror what Carl says, I've also adopted the 15-minute free Zoom call, which you can locate on my profile page on LinkedIn for book an appointment. And I'm focused primarily on optimizing LinkedIn success, as well as a great component of it, which is live streaming success, as well as having a really quality cohort group for shared knowledge. And, when we're talking about bootstrapping, we're typically talking about capital. We're not talking about knowledge. So one can access a great deal of knowledge and can also combine with other people who are very knowledgeable to come to oh, not conclusion, but a roadmap one can use. The other thing, teeing off of what Carl had mentioned, is that when you're bootstrapping, you have more proof of concept than when you're just projecting. Right? Someone could make a plan. It looks very beautiful in every way, but has never been tested. It doesn't mean you're the guy or gal who can do the plan. And when you do it yourself, you learn cheap, you learn fast, and that lesson sticks with you longer than most. And when you do go to someone for capital, it shows that you are willing to do it on your own. And you might have to be doing it on your own, even if you're out there sourcing capital. So someone will always, or may always ask you, well, what happens if you don't get the money? What does that do to your plan? Do you have a backup plan, or are you in a good position where, the longer you spend doing it yourself, the less risk there probably will be for the person coming in, which means you might get a better valuation than if you just had a paper plan with a lot of wonderful keywords that everybody relates to. And you may find out that your plan wasn't that strong and you saved yourself from getting out of the gate with it when you could have had something a little bit more proven or tested. And ultimately, the other good thing about bootstrapping, it's just you, yourself, and I. So you don't have anybody to impress. You don't have any permissions that you need to have. You don't have any obligations or responsibilities to anything but doing it your way and what you feel is the best way, which doesn't mean it's an independent way. It just means that, hey, if you believe in something and no one else is involved, hey, it's your right to take it to wherever you want to go. And it might lead you to where you should have been in the first place, but couldn't have got there without that first road or street to that boulevard you want to be on. And ultimately, you're always bootstrapping to a point. I guess there's a differentiation between bootstrapping on your own and bootstrapping with someone else's money or someone else's time. But once you get to there, hopefully your plan gets successful, and it's going to require more of something to accelerate the growth, make it more qualitative or expansive. And also, bootstrapping something in one way may not apply to being able to stage and scale it. So you might have a great concept in Detroit that works great in Detroit, but if you took it to Memphis, it may not work as well, and that would limit your exposure and growth, and also maybe extend the time. And there's one thing about money and time seem to go hand in hand. With less time, you probably need more money. With more money doesn't mean you need less time, but you have a pressure, you have a date, you have a goal. Someone puts money into your business, there's an expectation of when am I going to see a return? When are you going to get profitable? When are you going to get cash flow positive? I mean, all these questions are on the table and they're legitimate. And also, a lot of people do bootstrapping because they have to. Some people choose to do it because they want to get some clarification and visibility for themselves, because the other part of raising capital is who you're going to raise it with, and what's their expectations. And if they're not aligned with your goals, are you going to adjust your business to meet expectation? Or are you going to find the right partner who comes in with, their open eyes and the ability to really participate. I mean, what you want to do is get successful. There's a lot of people get up and fall down, and that doesn't do anything to anybody. So really a more staged, scaled approach, more transparent, and you might even find a person with money who also brings a piece of the puzzle that you don't have, which makes whatever you're doing more strategic than just financial. So, Karl, what is one quality bootstrapping experience you can share, either that you are directly involved in or assisted somebody in?
Well, I'm almost always involved in bootstrapping because, as I was describing earlier, most people who come to me for assistance don't have the money to do what we would call a good, reasonable capital campaign. And so they're short of the resources needed to design the campaign, to target the people they should be talking to put the word out on the street that they are looking for funding in a way where they can stay at it long enough to accomplish that. So bootstrapping is inherently built into the capital campaign at some point. One example was I was on a phone with one of my projects this morning, and this person is working with artificial intelligence, and the product is pretty much useful to anybody, but not everybody understands its utility, its value, or may have a significant value to understand, learn, and get there. So one of the things that is on the table is we're going to convene a brainstorming session. We're going to invite people to get on a Zoom call and try to find those people who would get the most benefit from this particular innovation, who therefore would have the greatest incentive to become a customer or possibly elevate that to become an investor, and to do that. So in one sense, we're bootstrapping. In another, we're already actually in a stage one investment, because we're asking people to donate their time to a brainstorming session, which we're going to get value out of. So we're saying, please invest in us by providing your time. Now, we might cheat and buy beer for everybody, so then it's a compensated brainstorming session. But the value of the beer is going to be far surpassed by all the ideas and concepts and perspectives we're going to get back from this group. So part of brainstorming is figuring out, as you say, what assets or resources do you have? If you have a social network with a lot of smart people in it, get them together to have them give you feedback. And that constitutes, in essence, your first capital campaign. It's not for dollars, but it's for time, and it's for knowledge, and it may be for context, because out of the brainstorming, somebody may say, hey, based on what we've been talking about for the last hour, while we've been drinking beers, I know somebody you should talk to. Let me make an introduction for you. So it's interesting if we break it down to the very, very basic parts that bootstrapping probably will include different forms of raising resources. They just may not be cash resources. Or you may know somebody owns a bar and he says, okay, fine, I'll put up all the beers if you guys come in, but you got to buy your own food, because that's where they're going to make their profit, to pay for the beers. So there are different ways of modeling and working to bring resources together to move you forward. And you need to think about all these. And a lot of these are new. You may never have done them before. Part of the reason for getting other people to participate is to give you a broader perspective, a broader horizon of ideas and creativity and context. And those in combination are going to have to get you to whatever the next level is going to be. If you decide this is who you need to talk to, then can you talk to them for free, or within maybe your own LinkedIn subscription? So you may have a free LinkedIn, or you're paying a higher rate like I do for a premium level, but I can search everybody on the internet who might be somebody I should talk to about my idea and ask them if they'd be willing to take a conversation on that. And if they are, then I've taken an investment I've made in LinkedIn both in setting up my profile and making myself visible to the world, but also a fee I've paid to LinkedIn for creating this billion-person directory of people and getting to the right person at the right time. So there's so many different ways we could go off on this, but bootstrapping requires a little bit of creativity. It does require leveraging your existing resources well, effectively towards where you want to go, and constantly developing, if you want to call it milestones or steps towards your ultimate goal of maybe raising funding or selling your first product, or developing a business model for what you're doing and going out and testing your business model in the market to see if this was a great idea or it was a bad idea.
Yeah, I think Karl makes a great point. And, you know, to acquire resources, you need to be extra resourceful. So, you know, the key is, you know, looking at your assets and your liabilities. You know, what are you strong in? What are you light in? What would make a difference to complete yourself or to optimize your abilities and capabilities? Also, what is attractive? And the challenge is the same as a benefit. You know, you got a huge world out there. You've got a great marketplace. There's so many people involved in it. What grabs people's attention and what also makes it kind of self-benefiting? You know, the whole question, what's in it for them, has to be answered. And unless you can answer that one, what's in it for them, you're not going to get as much attention. And there's so many people who are going about it in a traditional, non-effective way. You're competing against free. And so many people are used to getting free and someone paying them homage or giving them something in order for them to participate, that when do you pull that away and allow it to stand on its own or grow on its own? And, you know, a lot of people, they want easy. They don't always, they would prefer best, but they want it easy. They want it no risk. And that's a very difficult thing to do. And if it was that easy and no risk, you wouldn't need anybody, right? I mean, it's just like the guy who sells stock picks. Well, if he could pick the stocks, he doesn't need people to pay him a membership. He'd just go in the marketplace and keep it to himself and continue to win. Maybe one day write a book about it after he's all done with it and explain what he did and maybe capitalize on it one step further. And that's very difficult to do, is stand in somebody's shoes, but make them walk. You know, there's a lot of people who can relate to people, but they can't move the people. The people aren't going to be moved unless you continue to give a bargain. And then, you know, how much value do you have when you don't monetize it or can't monetize it to the value it could portend? Those are key issues. The beauty of what's going on today, especially with social media and specifically LinkedIn, is they have corralled a much larger professional group of individuals. There's a lot of industrious, ambitious people on LinkedIn who do a lot of work on a consistent basis. Maybe if you're only looking for thought leadership, that's easy to acquire. You know, if all you want to do is share your content and be considered an expert, well, there's a lot of people who love content, who love listening and learning. But when it comes time to say, okay, can you put some money forward? Then they all seem to change. You know, a lot of heroes become less heroic, you know, and that whole analogy with skin in the game starts to play a role because it benefits everybody involved. Because without it, I mean, play poker without any matchsticks even. Well, why would you go out if you had one to a flush or one to a straight, right? All you do is say, hey, I'll play, I can't lose, maybe I'll win. When there's something at stake, there's a little bit more attention, or there should be, and there's more participation and that ability to be innovative and creative. Because if we're talking about entrepreneurial, that's where all the fun begins, but all the challenge starts with it. So how can you be thinking of, I have to do something tomorrow, not I want to do something, or maybe I will do something. When you're forced to do something, you tend to do it, whether it's good, whether it's bad, whether you're ready, whether you're not. It makes you jump off the cliff and hope to grow wings before you hit the ground. So, in a lot of ways, you're encouraging people. And plus, I think there's another point where people got to show themselves at a certain point early on. It can't just be based on, when they see it, when they feel it, when they get benefit from it, they'll jump in. Most people think they're smarter than you anyways, right? And they'll take what you have, add it to what they have, and continue to run with it until they run into trouble again, which they probably will. And then they'll come back with the sad story. I just want to recognize Carrie, who seems to be with us almost all the time. What type of music do elves like best? Rap makes sense, especially with the holiday season coming on. And also, Carrie says, I still have to work on the newsletter. We'll have some puns and other useful things. Well, I think that's a positive approach. And I know me and Karl have had conversations about your jokes and hope you can leverage that to better potential and opportunity going forward. Karl?
Yeah, so Kerry has been a guest of the audience on shows in the past, and he's a jokester. He brings humor and a smile to your face with his jokes. And he's been looking for his next career path. And so, as Don and I talked about a little bit, we suggested that maybe Kerry become a publisher of jokes. He might provide jokes to people under a subscription service. So I might put something in my newsletter. I might put something on my show. I was at a program last week where the guy was trying to tell the joke to when they're changing speakers, and they were just awful. And I was thinking, he needs Kerry to give him some good jokes to tell while this is going on. But as I shared with Don over the weekend, I was working with ChatGPT on some other stuff, and I took a break and I decided to ask, find out if ChatGPT could write jokes, that might support Kerry and what he's doing. So I asked him, ChatGPT, as an example, give me 10 original AI jokes on artificial intelligence. And because Kerry said this morning that elves like rap music best, one of the jokes that the AI suggested is, what is AI's favorite type of music? And it responded, algorithm and blues. So, I do think that this is an example of a new tool in the toolbox. Being AI could open up a new business for Kerry that he could then monetize by selling subscriptions through an app. I wouldn't do it through a newsletter. That's more cumbersome than I think you need to do. But just to throw that out to you, Kerry, if you get a chance, if you've got ChatGPT, give it a try. See if it can be a tool in your toolbox. And then think about how would you get an app that you can get on Google Play or Apple Store that you could charge somebody a couple bucks a month for subscribing to, and you'll have a business. And test it out, as we've talked about. That all these things we're talking about could be done with relatively new money. You can bootstrap this pretty seriously and verify, validate it before you decide to go out and raise a gazillion dollars to fund it fully.
Well, I think that's very, very quality advice because, that plugs into what we're talking about today. A lot of resources you used to have to need, which wasn't that long ago, are very accessible and free today. And the amount of labor that used to go into something isn't that expensive, if at all. I was doing some Googling yesterday and some Chat GPT. And, there's another platform, I forget what it is, but they publish courses. It's Udemy or something like Udemy, right? and they have a way of helping you write a book in 30 minutes. You know, the challenge is that you can't really publish a book and copyright it if it's based on Chat GPT. So like if you want to publish it on Amazon, and there's a way to do it, there's limitations, but that doesn't restrict you from creating books that you just have for promotional purposes, just for self-independent areas. So the idea is what do you really need that's necessary to drive the business that isn't content based? It's not just picking up Googling and things like that and patching it together. What makes you unique? And I think that goes back to that asset and liability page that you can create. And the other thing that's important is what are you passionate about? What do you enjoy doing? Because that will get you through the times of leanness. And, you know, at least if you're successful, now you've got a track that is something you want to do, enjoy doing, and it'll also demonstrate itself with how you do it and how people perceive it. The other thing is you need to be accessible. You need to be a person who doesn't judge a book by its cover, you know, and can see beyond the superficial with people you're involved in. And a lot of times they're misguided as well as you being misguided. So two lost people together doesn't necessarily mean you'll be found, but means there's opportunity there if one can find it and find reasons to do it. The other element too that's important is accountability. And I know talking with Karl in the past, there's a lot of people that say a lot of things, but don't always perform up to their pronouncements. And, you know, you base it on what you know, what you feel, what you hear, but all of a sudden reality springs up and you start measuring and say, this isn't anything like we talked about, or this isn't what you said you were going to do or how you're going to do it. And now it's almost like there's people who would rather ask for forgiveness than permission and figure because they're so far into it, no one's going to turn back. But there are a point where principle does come into play, you know, and it happens with every relationship. Is you really got to say, where is the if you have a business that's continually growing and changing, the people who are managing it have to continue and change. The business doesn't change to you, you need to change to it for it to be relevant, for it to be scalable, and for it to be significant, because ultimately you got to distinguish and differentiate yourself in the marketplace. You know, it's not just, hey, here's who I am, but here's who I am compared to this, you know. And if you can say, if you're used to a Buick, wouldn't you like a Cadillac? Because it has all these features. And some people don't care about those features and they're more than happy with their Buick. But again, your marketing campaign should be already positioned for those people who want more and appreciate more. And I think specialization makes a big impact at that point. Is you don't want to fish in a pond where they don't have the fish you're looking to catch, right? If you're looking for salmon, you got to go where the salmon are, unless you don't care, and then it makes it easier, but then it doesn't make it very important at that point. So I think that's where someone like Karl, somebody like myself can help, is they can give you an honest, objective insight into what you're doing. Now, whether you agree with it, whether you follow it, that's not as important as having a sounding board that you can actually say, and I think that's what could happen in a quality 15-minute Zoom call, is you could say, you know, I'm taking 15 minutes of your time, want to be concise, want to be right to the point, right? Because if it is genuinely 15 minutes, you want to get everything out there in probably the first 3 to 5 minutes, right? So you give somebody a chance to understand it, maybe ask a few questions, and leave yourself about 5 minutes to their response, which could be great question, wrong person to ask it, or great initiative, or maybe lousy initiative, no need to go more than 15 minutes. And I think, anytime you can compress time, anytime you can be more concise, especially in a new relationship. When people get to know you, they have some reference, they have some context, they have some background, and maybe there's more detail that's required. But it's really, is this the person you want to work with? I mean, no different than any profession. Go to a doctor, they don't listen to you, they think they know everything, they don't care. To me, that's not, I always, there was a mystique about professionals, whether it was lawyers or accountants or doctors, that they're the authority, right? And whatever they say, that's what you should do. And people who question them tend to stand out in not a most positive way. Again, that's setting aside that group of those individuals. There's a lot of caring, interested people who know everybody's an individual and everybody has their sensitivities. And I think that's part of learning who you want to work with. Do they really care about me? And that goes both ways. Do they care about my business, or are they just looking for a fee? When things get tough, are they going to be a little bit more sensitive and aware to what I'm doing and why I'm doing it? And adjustments have to take place on both sides for relationships to stay stable and grow, because things will come up. And just like the question of, if you don't get the money, what do you do next? The idea is you should never be in a position where you're out there with a tin cup begging for something, because you're really weak at that point. And it doesn't look good, doesn't feel good, and it also questions your judgment as to why would you do that or say that, versus not embellishing something, but leading with your best foot, leading with your best attributes, and actually being open to help, saying, I know I can't do this on my own. It's not about just leveraging someone else's money or time. It's knowing that they're going to be an important part of this whole equation. And I think that's key. So, getting to bootstrapping directly, if you look at it physically, it's like pulling your boot on, right? That's where the bootstrap comes on, is you got to yank on it to make your foot fit into it and be able to move forward until you can get whatever you need. And maybe it's always bootstrapping, it's just at a different level and a different amount of effort and investment. So Karl, what do you suggest for people who are already bootstrapping, and what they can do to impact it in a positive way while they're looking for help, or position themselves so someone would be willing to help them?
Well, a person who's bootstrapping should already have in place a business plan with a stated mission, a set of goals that can be quantified, and a number of steps along the path to reach that particular goal. Unfortunately, most businesses I work with don't have any of that. So they're kind of being fully reactive rather than proactive. They're kind of wandering, because they don't have a goal. They're meandering. And if they are bootstrapping and they want to get out of bootstrapping, then they have to determine what resources they need to move down their particular business or individual path. And with an understanding of what those resources are, whether it's advice or a facility or it's access to AI, then everything becomes more precise. We can focus a lens on what these needs are, and we can determine who has those resources and what we need to do in order to get those resources. Now, we still may have a canyon that we can't jump over. It's too large, it's too wide. Well, we were talking about this before the show, that if you come up to a creek, you can wade through the creek because that's one of your options. Or there may be a set of stones that allows you to walk from stone to stone without getting your feet wet. And if it turns out there's not enough stones, maybe you can get a stone and put it in the creek and work your way across it. And so your goal is to set a goal, to determine what you need in order to get to that goal, then work in reverse engineering of who has the resource, what's it going to cost, why would they give that to you, maybe not for cash, but in exchange for services or for help or partnering or some other thing that doesn't require you go out and raise money from somebody who doesn't know you and doesn't care, so you can go out and buy something from someone you do know who does care. It's an interesting, we've adopted the myth that raising funding is the shortest path to success, and it's usually not. With a definitive direction, a compass in your hand telling you which direction to go, being creative and how to gather the resources you need to get to the next step, it becomes a building block, becomes a momentum builder to ultimately get you to wherever it is that you want to end up. And without that, then when you talk to people, they're like, so you're poor, so what? So is everybody else. I was laughing because you made the comment about desperation. I was fooling around with a new adjunct to my newsletter. I'm going to be adding in what I call funding fortunes, like fortune cookies from a Chinese restaurant. And one of them was investor interest is like dating. Desperation is not attractive. And I couldn't underscore that more. When you go out on the street and you say, give me money, and the person goes, what's in it for me? And you can't answer the question, why would you ever expect them to give you anything? If you start off the conversation with, I have something I think I can help you with, now you're talking to the person about their interest, why they should care. It may turn out you don't have what they need, or it's not great enough to get what you want out of the deal, but at least you'll have a conversation about it, which is more than you're going to get with an automatic rejection, because you stuck out your hand and go, you have money, I need money, so give me your money, with no explanation for why that should happen. But most pitches that you see in angel pitch competitions or entrepreneur pitch competitions are no more than professional begging. There's a slide deck, tells you there's some kind of a hockey stick growth to enter a market that no one's ever seen or tested by people who've never worked together. And you're asking yourself, why would anybody give this person any money? And their response is, because we're going to make you rich, which the person already is, or they wouldn't have any money to invest. Don has clearly stepped off stage here for a moment. So again, I have total control of the stage until he gets back. So while Don is gone, I've changed my slogan at the bottom of the page. This includes my web address for dakincapital.com. If you would like to schedule the 15 minutes with me, go to the website, get my email, and we can take care of that. Or if you have an interest in talking to Cap, my AI avatar, which is a free 24/7 by 365 source of information on funding, you can do that. And I was hopeful by this time that Don would be back in the conversation. But internet being what it is, a technology yet to be proven to a level of quality I would find acceptable, I'll just keep talking. We've been talking about bootstrapping. It's sometimes ugly, sometimes painful, because we're trying to do more with less. We're trying to do things that should probably cost more if we were writing a check for it. And so one of the things I talk to my clients about anytime they're raising capital is to stop and ask the question, will somebody invest in me, invest in my project without having to write a check? Because if they give me money, I'm only going to spend that money on something else. I'm going to hire somebody to help me. I'm going to buy a software license. I'm going to buy studio lights like I'm using here in my my live stream studio, or some other thing that I'm going to spend money on. And it may turn out that the person who is the vendor supplier for that particular product or service might be willing to work with me. They might sell it to me and allow me to pay 90 days later. So they've given me, in essence, an investment of a 90-day interest-free loan. It may be that we can do a swap where they say, hey, yeah, I'll give you the lighting system that you're looking for, but if you would give me some help on planning my own capital campaign, and we barter. And so Don is back,
I'm
and
back.
I'm so happy he's back because we've been watching our ratings fall precipitously since you went on screen. And I've been trying to indoctrinate people on everything about me and why 15 minutes is of my time or your time is another form of bootstrapping, because there are people out there who would like to form a relationship with you. They're offering up 15 minutes of time for you to get to know each other. And it's not going to cost you anything other than 15 minutes of your time. So there is an investment being made by you to call that person and spend 15 minutes with them. But Don made a very, very important point earlier, is when you start a 15-minute call, be prepared. Don't waltz into the meeting with, hi, I'm here. I'm not sure what we're going to talk about, but we've got 15 minutes, because that isn't going to get you where you want to go in the 15 minutes. Think of an IndyCar race where they pull into the pit to get fuel and tires changed out on the car. They're in and out in less than a couple minutes, and they've practiced and prepared so that their use of this specific point in time is like an ultimate demonstration of efficiency in what they're doing. When you go into any conversation with any person where you have a goal of what you want to accomplish in that conversation, you have a question you want to get answered, you want an introduction from someone, you need to come into it as prepared as you can be, which is another investment of time. So you might spend an hour of time to take advantage of somebody else's 15 minutes of time, and that's still a good use of your time altogether.
Yeah, I love that, Carl, because another thing that comes to mind, and we've talked about that in the past, is maybe in anticipation of the 15-minute call, someone gets a survey or a summary saying, it's just confirming this is a 15-minute call, because a lot of people will think, well, it's 15, but I can talk as long as I want until they say stop. And that may be true, but you have to earn it through your first 15 minutes, right? So if you're really strong and you got something going and the other person has time and you're gambling that they do, I wouldn't wait for the best part of it to come after 15 minutes. Or you could just, start out with, I respect your time today. I know it's 15 minutes. I prepared something that we can go through and be comfortable with the 15-minute time frame. And then maybe if there's something, you could schedule another time later. Or if it's really interesting, it's up to both parties to decide to continue. But it's everybody's responsibility to help everybody else's responsibility get the benefit of the opportunity. I know when I did road shows in the past, it was, you're here at this point, you're gone at this point, right? If you had a whole group of people around the table who's used to seeing this day in and day out from so many people, professionalism, respect for people's time, and more importantly, respect for their intelligence. So don't talk down to people, when you go meet them, like you're the authority, and you may be in the topic or the initiative you are, but they probably have a lot more experience in talking to people like yourself, seeing opportunities. And also, what you think is important may not be important to them, and what's important to them you may not be aware of. So doing a little research. I mean, even if you're going for a job interview, and we're talking about interviewing anyways here, it's different for money, maybe a little bit, but research the company. Show that you took a little time to say, I've been following Procter and Gamble all my life, and our family used your products, and be sincere, be honest, but show that it wasn't just, another number, another time, another person, that there's some meaningfulness to what you're doing. And that applies to looking for funding. And bootstrapping is really kind of understanding there isn't any funding outside of yourself or the people close to you. And what are you going to do to make up for the difference? And that's strategically joined together, like Karl says. If you can't or aren't in a position to raise money, or maybe you don't want to, maybe you say it's too early and I'd be giving up way too much for too little. And where's the future? An example, if you look at the Colorado Buffaloes, right? They brought in a guy like Deion Sanders, and pretty soon everybody's flocking to their door. Where 2, 3 years ago would be the last place a person who's looking to win a Heisman Trophy or a national championship's going to go. They might like the school and the weather and the ability to play. It's the same thing. If you want to get on a championship team, you've got to appeal to that leader of the team to know that you're worthy of the investment in you. You know, that they're going to train you, they're going to coach you, they're going to prepare you. And what do you have to offer in return? And usually it's hard work, it's dedication, it's commitment. And sometimes not the smartest, the strongest, or the fastest get the situation. It's somebody that can continue to adjust, somebody that's an easy person to work with, easy person to talk to, somebody that deals with reality and is not stubborn and believes against what the current is today. And that takes a little bit of understanding and training. And I know that Karl brings that to the table is temperament. Like, hey, let's not get too enthusiastic here too early, and let's not get too weak here too fast. Or I know these people, I know what they're looking for. It's like having a scout. I've been down this road many times, and here's what I found to be true. And if there is no trust and confidence in your knowledge, experience, and wisdom, it's a non-starter for both parties. Find somebody who relates and identifies with your approach, and there's people out there. And that would be good advice early, because less time invested in something that's not going anywhere, or worst case is going to take a lot of time to find that out, is not going to help you or help them. So what's in it for them starts, then what's in it for us begins, and what's in it for me ends. Right? If you don't answer those first two, the third one is not very relevant or important. And the same thing in anything like on social media. Who are you publishing stuff for? Is it just to be seen, to be heard? Well, that's not bad, but that's not enough, right? It's about targeting. Who is your audience? How do you reach your audience? What does your audience relate to? And then be able to carve something together. One thing about LinkedIn, they don't tell you how much you can't do. They tell you what you can do, but they don't tell you how much of it. So as long as you stay within the boundaries, you could publish 10 things a day. To Karl's point with his fortune, I found that to be really successful when I decided that some wise person told me the only 3 things you offer is either education, entertainment, or inspiration. And I said, well, why not offer all 3 in a post? And just like Karl's doing with his fortune, I had 5 LinkedIn tips. Now I've got 10 LinkedIn tips. And I also had 5 great connections that I listed every day, which was also something that everybody was tagged in who was listed and got to see that I was promoting them. And the third thing was great sayings. And just like a joke or a fortune, there's a lot of people want to hear what Andrew Jackson said one day, or Winston Churchill. And some people like to see all 3, but they know it is definitely value driven for them. I don't make money, or didn't make money off of sayings, off of tips, or off of inspirations or people. But I know people at least saw that as an unbiased approach to value. Now what happens after that is once you get a continuous readership, you'll start to be able to message below that, right? So here's the 15 things of value today. And by the way, I've got this going, I've got that going. And again, it's not, you know,
So Don is obviously having internet issues today. I'll start talking here for a little bit till Don resumes his hosting position. But yeah, when you're trying to communicate out there, every communication is an investment of your time to craft it, style it, create it, and distribute it. Within my work as a capital coach and working with people on raising funding, I'm using this as an opportunity as a guest and on my successful funding show on Tuesday mornings and my newsletter on CAP, my AI avatar, and my 15 minutes. These are all ways in which I'm basically allocating part of my marketing and sales budget to sharing information on what I do. And it's an investment of my time to start, initiate, and build relationships that may convert over to something I can monetize in the form of a consultation, or I'll be putting on a workshop in mid-January, a 4-hour half-day workshop on raising funding. I'm going to charge a fee for that. Everything I'm doing between now and then is letting everybody know who's already in my communication network that I'm going to be doing the workshop. This is where I'm going to earn back some of the money, or the money that's going to pay for all the marketing and sales that I'm doing through all the open sharing, the free sharing that I'm doing. Being on a LinkedIn live show is as a guest, or running your own show, working with Don to set up your own show, something I highly recommend to any business person, and even as a way of testing a market where you're saying, I think this is something of interest to people, but rather than spending a gazillion dollars to find out you're wrong, you can put it out there in your own LinkedIn live show on a weekly or monthly basis for a period of time and see what kind of response you get. And if you don't get any response, maybe that's going to tell you that it's time to go back to the drawing board and try something else. But these are communications with people you know, but they also are ways to get to meet new people, to build new relationships, and to treat your relationships as your probably most important asset. So I've been very happy in working with Don. So this is going to become a Don commercial about the Don of LinkedIn here. But I started working with Don in August of last year in 2023, where I was looking, I'd already done podcasting. I wasn't happy with the results I was getting. I was putting a lot of information out to the world, but I had no mechanism really for them to get back to me. So it was not an interactive form of communication. And it came across as an advertisement in its entirety. So it was too slick. It was too crafted, too edited. And anyone who saw it would go, he's just selling something. And I wasn't able to express who I was, what I was doing, what I care about, which is important for the type of relationships I want to be engaged in. I started working with Don towards the idea of my own LinkedIn live show. But before that, Don said, hey, you should do a newsletter like he does a newsletter. And I started that. I'm over 1,200 subscribers on my daily newsletter, and I'm now over 500 on a weekly newsletter, which is a compilation of everything I do during the week. So you can read me 5 times a week or once a week, depends on your preferences. That kind of communication is me getting out there with Don's assistance, figuring out how to tell my story better, more effectively, more authentically. And I'm building new relationships, which is what I wanted. And now I'm in a position where if I wanted to do my workshop a year ago, I would have only been able to tell a few people. Now I'm going to be telling over 1,700 people through my newsletter. I'm doing a workshop. And so I've got a better vehicle for those things I'm going to charge for. while I'm continuing to do my best job to give out new, better, more valuable advice. Every time I turn around, Don's done something to his newsletter to make it more valuable. And I watch what he does, and then I figure out how would that apply to me or not work for me. And then I try to do something better on my newsletter, because it's a constant process to get out there. But to a point that we both made earlier in the show is if you're going to raise funding, if you're going to do anything in moving forward your business or your career, you have to stand out. There's 8 billion people on the planet, and it's hard for them to know you exist and understand that there is a value to them of forming a relationship with you. If you don't have a vehicle for letting them know those two things, then that relationship probably will never happen. And hopeful that they're going to, like build a mousetrap, they're going to show up at your door. That is a myth that doesn't happen. And if it turns out everybody's building a mousetrap at the same time, like we talked about with artificial intelligence on my show yesterday, out of 8 billion people on the planet, or 7 billion, or whatever the number is, probably 6 billion of them have their new AI business that they're trying to start up, and they're all trying to raise money. So the challenge of standing out becomes that much more difficult. So your strategy, including bootstrapping, has to be that much better for telling people who you are, letting them understand the value you bring, and why they should pick you over everybody else who's claiming they're doing the same thing, right or wrong. Most people are just waving their hands right now. But if you have something, you got to get out there and tell your story effectively. And this is one platform for doing that. There's other things you can do, which are either free or inexpensive, which is part of the bootstrapping. Better value for your dollar.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree with you more, Carl. And, what this program over time has proven is that you only really go in with half a loaf, and the other person brings the other half, right? So their half makes you whole, your half makes them whole. What they're thinking drives your thinking, and you come up with something that's a composite, possibly, that you wouldn't have done on your own, because you would have just continue to focus on your strength, on your passion, on your interest, and maybe sharpen the pencil a little bit more, come up with a different style. But in essence, are you really improving? And in this dynamic world and the dynamic business world we live in, you need to be more than yourself. You need to show what's going to change. And you don't get that much smarter without someone else's help. It could be reading a book. It could be watching a show like this. It could be collaborating. And I think collaborating is key, because when you're facing big numbers, you have to have some level of scale to begin with, and starting by yourself, with yourself, it's a lonely journey. Sometimes you don't get enough feedback, or sometimes you don't get enough quality feedback. Your good friends and family will tell you you're great whether you're not. Your haters will tell you you're awful whether you're not. And having somebody that's really honest, objective, has nothing really to gain by putting you on the wrong road, doesn't make a lot of sense. And by being able to leverage what you have for someone else that you can't fully leverage for yourself, or add another passenger to the bus that you're driving, right? So if I have a newsletter including someone else's opportunity, only enhances my newsletter, because first of all, we're not talking about me, right? There's just some altruism to it, or benefit that's derived from helping someone else. It's also exposing other people. I remember in my store, if I couldn't help them, I'd send them and call up in advance to say, hey, I got a guy coming down, can you help him out? He's looking for this. And someone would say, yeah, I'll put it aside. Most people would say, why would you send business to your competition? Well, the idea was, who's serving your customer, right? And if you can't get the sale, that person will still tell friends. And one day when they remember that they need something else, they'll remember the kind gesture. So sometimes you do something because you can, and because it's the right thing, and because it really doesn't cost you much. When the customer leaves and you got the next hour to yourself, what would a 2-minute phone call? And meanwhile, you're building goodwill with the competition. Well, this guy over there sending us business. Well, one day someone might want his stuff. Or one day I'll be honest and say, hey, he's not a bad guy. It's a good place to shop, versus people tell you they're the only thing in town, the only person you should listen to. And you know better. And you don't feel good about that, because when you find out later that someone knew something that didn't tell you that they could have, it makes you feel like they weren't acting in good faith. And there's enough people out there that you don't have to deal with scarcity, and through my newsletter, and, I'm up to 20 some thousand when you combine the two newsletters. I mean, these are legitimate LinkedIn people who opted in and continue to get the email every time that newsletter. And any of them can cancel, if they choose to. But I know we're coming up on the top of the hour. And, I find, we've had probably 60 shows. I know if we look back at the first shows and how much we've matured, so how much we've grown, and that's been at the benefit of the other shows we've done with so many other people and the cohort group. It's a refinement, it's a distillation. It's taking something raw material and kind of configuring it to something better and having a conversation. I think this applies to people like Karl, who like to talk just like I do, who are comfortable in having conversations with people they don't know and may never even meet, because I know there's a cadre of people who just listen and watch either during the show or after, never make themselves known, and they're just as well appreciated. And there's a future, right? Because we're leveraging something that continues to grow and change and benefit on its own, which is LinkedIn and live streaming. So with that said, want to thank everybody for being here, especially Karl, and come back tomorrow. We've got Kelly, Dave, and Jason, who we're talking about. Trust will be our topic tomorrow, which is so valuable. So with that said, thank you, Karl. Thank you, audience. Sorry for the 2 time aways today. Second one was a lot faster. It's almost like how do you take a rifle and disassemble it in 8 seconds and put it back together? That's always the goal when you're tossed off. So with that final word, goodbye. Thank you very much.